There's a kind of strength that can't be faked. Steel in the spine, calm in the storm, a life ruled by honor rather than impulse. And today, you'll discover exactly how to get there. You've met men who don't flinch. Bills pile up, people doubt them, comfort seduces them, yet they move forward anyway. While most crack at the first sign of resistance, these few grow sharper under pressure. What makes them different? The answer lives in an old Japanese code, Bushido, the warrior's way, refined by centuries of Shūgi, austere practice, and the Zen ideals of Mushin, no mind, and Zanshin, ever-ready presence. But there's a catch. To live by a code, you must kill your excuses. A part of you will not survive. If you're serious about building an unbreakable life, subscribe now and comment the one rule you'll adopt today. Let's begin. Kenji wakes to the glow of a screen that never really sleeps. Tabs open like unfinished lives. A half-folded gym shirt on the chair. A book with a ribbon stuck at page 21. A calendar square that still says start in block letters from 3 weeks ago. He pads through the apartment, dodging the dumbbells he promised himself he'd use, the guitar he vowed to learn, the apology he meant to make. It's Saturday. He promised his younger brother he'd help move. 7 a.m. sharp, I got you. He even said it in that cheerful, sturdy voice he saves for when he wants to look like a reliable man. At 6:43, he stares at the message thread with his thumb hovering. At 6:49, he drafts a text. Hey man, something came up. He doesn't send it. He sets the phone down. He picks it up. He edits, running late, then replaces it with the original excuse, then deletes the whole thing and slides the phone face down like he's putting a problem under a rug. By 7:12, he's pacing. The relief of not showing up is immediately chased by a metallic taste of shame. He imagines the look on his brother's face, not angry, worse, unsurprised. It's not a betrayal you can make a speech about. It's one of those tiny fractures that accumulates until the bridge fails. He sinks onto the couch and watches light crawl across the floorboards. A sentence he doesn't want to think forms anyway. If my words mean nothing, neither do I. He tries to fight it with familiar strategies. A motivational video cued to the part where the music swells, a promise to start Monday, an online cart full of notebooks and highlighters that will make his intentions look organized. He can feel the old cycle setting like wet concrete. He closes the laptop. The room hums. He realizes how often he's said, I'll be better, and how little that sentence has purchased. He won't say it again, not today. He just doesn't know what to put in its place. On the walk to clear his head, he passes a glass front dojo he's never noticed. Maybe because noticing would have required the kind of attention that costs something. Shoes neatly lined at the entrance, a small stone basin for washing hands, a wooden sign with 2 brushstrokes. Practice and presence. Inside, a handful of students are bowing out as an older man sweeps the floor with the slow, precise movements of someone who thinks the floor matters. Kenji stands in the doorway long enough to be seen. The teacher looks up and nods as if Kenji's arrival is a continuation of something they started long ago. You're late, the teacher says, not unkindly. For what? Kenji asks. For yourself, the teacher replies, and returns to sweeping. There's a bench near the door. Kenji sits, unsure whether to speak. The teacher finishes, leans the broom against the wall, and brings out a slim booklet bound with twine. Not a glossy brochure, more like a letter from a past life. You don't need motivation, the teacher says, placing it in Kenji's hands. You need oaths. Inside, 7 short rules, no flourishes, no heroics. G, rectitude. U, courage. Makoto, sincerity. Rei, respect. Meiyō, honor. Chūgi, loyalty. Jin, benevolence. Each with a single training directive. Not be honorable, but things like decide once, act at once, speak little, deliver fully, bow with your voice, choose clean words, keep your name clean when no one is watching, keep the oath even when it is inconvenient, make your strength safe for others. The paper smells faintly of cedar. The rules feel like a mirror that reflects not how he feels, but how he behaves. The code is simple, the teacher says, pouring tea into 2 tiny cups. Living it is not. Something in you will not survive. That is the point. What dies? Kenji asks. the liar you tell yourself you are not. Kenji looks down at the page. The brush strokes are imperfect but intentional, like human bones, irregular, strong. He signs his name on the back, an act so small it's almost nothing. Yet it feels like a hinge. Oaths don't make you capable overnight, they make you accountable now. He slips the booklet into his jacket as if a thief might come for it and steps back into the bright morning, the old teacher's words tagging along in his chest. That afternoon, he clears his desk and draws 2 columns on a blank sheet. On the left, he writes, hard right. On the right, easy wrong. It's embarrassingly simple. Hard right, call your brother, admit the miss, ask to help today, show up. Easy wrong, send a clever excuse, make a new promise, buy him a gift to glaze over the fracture. The code's first rule, rectitude, doesn't ask him to wait until he feels brave or inspired. It asks him to do the next clean thing. He stares at the words until they stop being words and become a doorway. He takes 2 breaths and dials. Hey, he says when his brother answers. I didn't show. I'm not going to explain it away. Are you still moving? I can be there in 20. There's a pause long enough for Kenji to imagine every possible response. Then, yeah. If you come, bring tape. Kenji arrives at 6:58 p.m. with tape and coffee. Late for the morning, 2 minutes early for the evening. He lifts boxes without commentary. He wraps dishes without clatter. He asks where things go and actually listens. When his brother thanks him, Kenji doesn't give a speech about being different now. He says, I owed you. They finish at 10:13. It's ordinary work, but inside him, a new axis clicks into place. Neuroscience would call it identity evidence, the prefrontal cortex getting a clear signal. This is what we do. The satisfaction is not a fireworks show. It's the warm, correct weight of something set back where it belongs. Back home, he takes the sheet with the 2 columns and tacks it on the wall, where he'll see it when his eyes drift. He adds a tiny rule beneath it. Decide within 2 breaths. Not 2 hours. Not after he's thought about it 3 times. 2 breaths. The body's metronome keeps him from bargaining with himself. Rectitude is not a mood. It's a muscle that only grows when loaded. He writes a list of situations where he knows he breaks. When the alarm rings, when a difficult email sits in his inbox, when someone asks him for just a minute. Next to each, he adds the hard right he'll do inside 2 breaths, feet on floor, draft and send, say, I don't have the bandwidth today, or yes, but 4:45. He lowers the bar on drama and raises the bar on action. The next morning, his alarm insists at 6 a.m. He feels the familiar fog and the argument begins, but he strangles it with the rule, 2 breaths. On the second exhale, he's upright, feet on cold floor. It's not heroic. It's clean. He makes the bed immediately, one small rectangle of order in a world that happily slides toward entropy. On the kitchen counter, a sticky note waits. Coffee, water, call. The smallest possible sequence. He doesn't scroll. He doesn't open 12 tabs that can be opened after he's done the first clean thing. He calls the client he's been avoiding and says the sentence he wrote last night. I missed the deadline. Here's the amended timeline. Here's what I'm doing to prevent it again. The call takes 4 minutes. It would have taken him 3 days of dread to not make it. In the afternoon, he sets up a micro-ceremony for decisions. When faced with a fork, he stands tall, inhales, exhales, asks, what is the hard right? He names it out loud, not to the room, but to his own nervous system. Then he does it. Because it is small, he does not collect applause or even relief. What he collects is proof. The basal ganglia, the brain's habit machinery, bank the reps. The friction he used to feel before doing the right thing starts moving to the other side. Now it's the wrong thing that scrapes. Yet some things require not just rectitude, but walking into the heat. Kenji writes 3 lines in a notebook under a title he almost laughs at, Daily Lions. He lists them without euphemism. The email to the client he underquoted and must renegotiate. The cold shower he has avoided for years because it makes him feel like he's drowning. The conversation with his manager about being considered for a lead role despite his uneven record. Courage, according to the booklet, is not the deletion of fear, but the decision to approach fear in controlled, bite-sized steps. He designs a rule he can't wiggle out of. 3 minutes. Whatever the lion is, he will face it for 3 minutes minimum. If after 3 minutes it still devours him, he can stop, but he must start. He begins with the email. He sets a timer, opens a blank message, and types the first sentence without dressing it up. I underquoted your project, and that is my mistake. The timer beeps once. He keeps typing. He doesn't perform guilt. He offers solutions, 2 options, both concrete. He reads it once, strips 3 softening words, and hits send. He half expects fireworks or doom. What he gets is a reply 12 minutes later. Thanks for the clarity. Let's go with option B. Not every lion will be so tame, he knows, but not every lion is a dragon either. He writes a line in the margin. Fear grows in imagination, shrinks in contact. That evening, he turns the shower to cold. His body protests like it's rehearsed. Breath goes ragged. Mind screams exit. He goes back to the rule, 3 minutes, and locks eyes with the second hand. He focuses on one thing: exhale longer than inhale. The water is a slap that becomes a steady percussion. He steps out shaking, not from cold, mostly from having done what he said he would do. The point isn't becoming a cold shower person. The point is to be someone who can walk toward a lion and stay long enough to learn it. The hardest lion remains, the conversation with his manager. He drafts and deletes an email. He tries to find the sentence that will make it safe. There isn't one. Courage is not a guarantee of success. It's a guarantee that failure will be honest. He knocks on the doorframe and asks for 10 minutes. They step into a small conference room. He doesn't pitch, he reports. Here's my performance over 6 months. Here are the misses. Here are the fixes already in place. Decision rule, 2 breath calls, written commitments. I want to be considered for a lead role. If you say I'm not ready, I'll ask what evidence would make me ready, and I'll bring it back in 90 days. His manager watches him like a person who has seen Kenji promise and vanish before. Why now? She asks. Because I stopped using feelings as weather, he says. I'm using them as data. And I have a code now, not a mood. She doesn't smile, but something in her posture shifts. 90 days, she says, with evidence. He walks out both proud and slightly sick. That's the taste of real courage. Not the high you get from praise, but the steadying that comes when your actions and your words finally share a backbone. On the train home, he opens the booklet again, running a thumb over the brushstrokes until the edges soften. He writes in a small notebook 3 lines he'll return to daily. Decide once, act at once, approach the lion for 3 minutes. Collect evidence for the man I say I am. Days stack. He does not win them all. One morning he fumbles and spends 21 minutes doom scrolling. He doesn't make it heroic by doubling his to-do list. He returns to rectitude. 2 breaths, feet on floor, call the person, do the first clean thing. In the evening, he faces a lion and gets bit. His renegotiation with a different client turns into a lecture about professionalism. He doesn't defend. He absorbs what is useful, lets the rest pass like weather, and writes down one improvement that is within his command. Send earlier warning, not day of confession. Courage is not pretty every day. It is repetitive and humbling. It is a practice. What surprises him most is how little anyone else notices at first. He had imagined courage and rectitude would make the world throw confetti. Instead, the world behaves as it always has, indifferent and steady. But he notices. The way his hand moves to the phone and pauses, 2 breaths, and calls. The way his mouth forms the short, honest sentence instead of the ornate excuse. The way his body knows how to walk toward discomfort before his mind makes a story. These are not fireworks. These are bricks. He begins to enjoy the quiet click of doing what he decided, of moving toward what scares him in small, controlled doses. He cares less about feeling like a disciplined man and more about having done disciplined things. When someone asks how he's changing, he doesn't say motivation or hacks. He says, I made oaths. And when they nod politely, he doesn't sell them on it. He knows the oaths weren't for them. On his wall, the columns remain, hard right and easy wrong. The paper is a little curled at the corners now, like something weathered but alive. Underneath, new lines. Tell the truth without theatre. Make the next clean move inside 2 breaths. Walk toward the lion for 3 minutes. The sheet is not a monument. It's a map that only works while he's walking. One night, after a day that was neither triumphant nor terrible, he sits on the floor with the booklet open on his lap. He thinks about what the teacher said. Something in you will not survive. He tries to identify what has been dying. It's not fear. Fear remains, smaller but present. It's not laziness. His body is often tired but more ready. What is dying, slowly and by choice, is the small liar. The one who'd say yes to be liked, no to stay comfortable, later to avoid the friction of now. It doesn't go quietly. It wheedles and bargains. But every time Kenji chooses the hard right quickly and faces one lion for 3 minutes, that liar loses jurisdiction. He closes the booklet and feels, not powerful exactly, but aligned. The kind of strength that doesn't perform, that doesn't run around asking to be seen. The kind that stacks like stone. Tomorrow will ask again. He already knows his answer. Kenji starts noticing how much of his day is made of words he doesn't need. The little puff-ins of maybe and probably to cushion a promise. The filler syllables that spill out when he's not sure if he can do something and says yes anyway, because it buys a moment of relief. He takes a blank page and draws a new set of columns, simpler than the first. On the left, I will. On the right, not yet. He writes slowly, letting each sentence cost him. I will send the audit by Thursday 5 p.m. I will show up to Dad's appointment Wednesday 2 p.m. Not yet, new side project. Not yet, agree to the weekend trip. He stares at the page, surprised by the lightness that comes from telling the truth before the future can expose him. He starts keeping what he calls a promise ledger. It's nothing dramatic, just a small notebook where every commitment lives, with a box to check only when the thing is done, not when it's announced. He learns to close his mouth a little sooner and open his calendar a little faster. When a friend texts, "Can you help me paint on Sunday?" The old reflex sparks. Say yes, feel liked, fail later. He feels it rise and lets it pass. He opens the ledger, checks the hours, and types back, "Not Sunday. I can give you Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. If that doesn't work, I'll cover the drop cloths and sandpaper." There's a pause, then a laughing emoji and a "Tuesday is perfect." Sincerity, it turns out, doesn't make him less kind. It makes his kindness precise. At work, he trims language with a craftsman's patience. "I'll try" becomes "I will" or "I won't." "Soon" becomes a date. He drafts emails without the sugar that hides rot. "I missed the QA window. I'm moving the release to Friday 10 a.m. If you need earlier, here are the trade-offs in writing." The first time he hits send, he half expects an explosion. What arrives instead is a quiet exchange where grown-ups speak clearly and solve problems. When he does slip, and he does, he writes it down in the ledger that night with what went wrong and what sentence should have been said instead. The ledger becomes an odd source of pride, not spotless, but honest. Each clean line is another stitch in a name that will hold. He notices too that sincerity costs him in small social currencies. There are fewer "you're the best" replies when he's not handing out cheap yeses. There are also fewer icy silences after he's missed. He discovers he doesn't need to be a fireworks show of promises to be trusted. He needs to be a dull metronome of delivery. He practices one small ritual every morning. Before touching his phone, he reads yesterday's I will entries and chooses the one he'd be most embarrassed to miss. That becomes his first clean block of the day. When he checks it off, he doesn't post, he doesn't celebrate. He just writes the next line and gets to it. It feels almost too simple for how well it works. The teacher's margin note on Makoto rings in his head. Say little, deliver much. He tries a week of what he calls small mouths, fewer adornments. He answers questions with the answer, not the backstory. He's amazed at how much of respect is bound up in the discipline of not making other people listen to your inner negotiations. When he's not sure, he says, "I don't know, I'll get you a date by 3 p.m. And then he does. He notices that sincerity makes him less interesting at dinner parties and more valuable everywhere else. He chooses everywhere else. Still, his mouth is a wild animal under stress. He sees it in a meeting when a coworker edges him, speaking over his point and frowning like Kenji brought chaos in on his shoes. The heat rises fast. He feels the comeback sentences line up, sharp and satisfying, ready to fly. A dozen invisible selves clamor to be right. He reaches down for a technique the booklet paired with Rei, the practice of bowing with your voice. It's not about lowering yourself. It's about lowering the volume of your ego to hear the whole room. He lets silence sit for 2 beats. The room shifts minutely the way rooms do when someone refuses bait. He inhales through his nose, counting to 4, and exhales to 6. The exhale sends a message down the Vegas highway that there is no emergency. When he finally speaks, the words are thinner and stronger. You might be right. Let's check the numbers. The tension spills without a splash. They open the dashboard. She was half right. He was missing a metric. He corrects his point without flinching. It doesn't feel like losing. It feels like keeping his blade sheathed until there is something to cut. He starts a small ceremony at his desk before important conversations. Feet flat, spine tall, hands open, one breath longer than comfort. He looks at the face he's about to speak to and imagines placing a cup of tea between them. He asks himself 3 quiet questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it respectful? And if a sentence fails any one of the 3, he lets it die inside his mouth. This habit alone changes the architecture of his days. He talks less, he listens more, and when he speaks, people don't brace. Outside work, respect shows up in micro-scenes that used to steal his peace. On the train, a stranger shoulders past and mutters. Old Kenji would spend 3 stops auditioning cutting phrases he will never say. New Kenji feels the spark and bows to it internally the way you bow to an honored opponent. He notices the stranger's hunched shoulders, the dark circles, the scuffed briefcase. He doesn't romanticize it. He just refuses to let a bump possess his nervous system. He returns to soft eyes and a long exhale. The stranger gets off 2 stops later, and Kenji keeps the day he almost surrendered. Respect becomes a lever with his father too, not the sleepy kind where he lets himself be talked over out of guilt, but the upright kind. On Wednesday at 2 p.m, he shows up exactly as promised and sits in the cramped waiting room that smells like antiseptic and peppermint candy. His father wants to complain about everything, doctors these days, the forms, the parking, and Kenji lets the gust pass without stealing up for argument. When the nurse mispronounces their last name, his father's jaw sets, and Kenji simply says with a small smile, "It rhymes with steady." The nurse laughs and repeats it correctly. In the car afterward, his father says, surprised, "You didn't snap once." Kenji shrugs. Didn't need to. It's a small victory he doesn't post to his mind's highlight reel, but he feels the muscles that hold his mouth in place getting stronger. The test of respect matures into a test of honor when the recruiter calls. It's late on a Thursday, and Kenji is sipping lukewarm tea over a code review when the number lights up. He answers casual at first, then attentive. The opportunity is clean money, fast title, and one catch. They're moving up a release for a client demo. They need a polished-looking prototype that suggests a capability it doesn't fully have. "Everyone does it," the recruiter says, cheerful as a weather report. "It's an industry wink. You ship the real thing in a month." The words slide down smooth, engineered to lodge. A younger version of Kenji would have said yes before his brain finished the thought. He asks for the spec. They send it. He reads line by line. It's not an outright lie, but it's a hairline fracture painted to match the wall. If this goes out, users will think they can rely on a feature that will fail at the edge case where failure hurts most. He feels the heat in his chest, not outrage, fear. Fear of missing a leap. Fear that his new code is just a set of nice words until it costs something. He thinks of the line in his booklet. Guard the name when no one is watching. He writes the sentence by hand to feel the weight of each letter. He calls his manager. He explains the request, the risk, the timeline. He expects a sigh, a lecture on being realistic. She goes quiet and asks, "What do you propose?" He answers without heat. We tell them the truth and offer a demo that shows the authentic capability, plus a sandbox of what's coming, labeled accordingly. We keep our name clean and give them something real to trust. She says, that will risk the deal. He says, then we risk the deal. There is a long breath on the line. She says, write the email. CC legal. They write it. It is crisp and almost boring. No apology for doing the right thing, no swagger either. The client thanks them for the clarity and chooses a competitor's flashier promise. The recruiter stops calling. Kenji walks home under a sky that looks like untouched steel and feels both loss and a strange serenity. It hurts a little to watch a door close. It hurts more to imagine being the man who cheated to pry it open. He realizes honor doesn't make his life easier. It makes it simpler. Fewer contortions, fewer stories to track. That same week, a second test blooms in the quieter place where loyalty lives. A friend he's known since school asks him to vouch for a freelance proposal he hasn't read, to say he's worked with him on similar projects. It's a tiny lie, a low-stakes nod that would grease the wheels. He drafts the old sentence, absolutely, I can say we collaborated. And then he looks at the ledger. He thinks of how his name has been inching its way toward meaning something you can lean your weight on. He deletes the draft and writes, I won't say we collaborated when we didn't. If you want, I'll review the proposal tonight and give honest feedback. If I can add my name truthfully to any part, I will. His friend sends a thumbs up, then a respect. They stay friends. Another small hinge squeaks into place. The shape of his days changes. Honor makes him slower to accept opportunities and faster to decline the wrong ones. Loyalty expands its meaning, not blind allegiance to a person or company, but fidelity to oaths and to the future version of him who must live with the signatures he leaves. He stops accumulating little IOUs to himself and others. He pays daily in clean actions. He finds that sleep, the real kind, the one that comes without a chase, likes men whose names aren't at war with their deeds. Strength, however, left without benevolence, turns into a blade that cuts indiscriminately. He tests the final rule in the quietest arena. How he uses the sturdiness he's been building to make other people safer, not more afraid. The co-worker who snapped at him months ago is sitting alone with the haunted look of someone whose life is louder than they can say. Kenji sends a simple message. Coffee on me? They sit on a bench under a tree that throws dappled light across the pavement. He doesn't give a lecture on communication styles. He listens. She has a parent in the hospital and a child with a cough that keeps circling back. Everything aches. He asks what one small thing would make her week easier. She says, if someone could take the 8 a.m. deploy Friday. He checks the ledger. He can move 2 blocks around. I'll take it. He doesn't send a company-wide message about his generosity. He just shows up at 7:55, checks the logs, deploys, leaves a clear handoff. That afternoon, she messages a simple thank you. It feels like a stone placed exactly where it belongs on a path. He mentors an intern named Amara who is sharp in the eyes and shy in the voice. Instead of giving her sweaty motivational speeches about leaning in, he gives her weekly reps she can win. Explain the feature to me in 2 sentences as if I'm a neighbor. We'll refine until it lands. They rehearse. He shows her his ledger and how he translates I'll try into dates. He doesn't pretend he was born disciplined. He shows her the scaffolding. She starts delivering small, clean victories. He watches her spine gather inches of invisible height. This is what benevolence feels like. Not patronizing help that keeps someone small, but precise support that lets them stand. At home, he drives to his father's apartment twice a week, not to fix everything, not to perform filial piety, but to be steady. He changes a hard-to-reach light bulb, takes out trash heavy enough to twist a back, sits through a game show with the sound too loud. They do not solve their childhood in one conversation. They place simple kindness into the week like bricks. The neighbor down the hall is wrestling a stroller and sliding groceries across a foot at a time. Kenji takes the stroller, loads the bags into his forearms like logs, and walks them to the door. You don't have to, she says, embarrassed. I know, he says. I'm not busy. The phrase startles him. How many years did he define himself by busyness while doing nothing that mattered? He chooses to make that sentence true more often. He starts to notice that the strongest men he admires in the dojo are the gentlest with beginners. When a white belt stumbles through a sequence, they do not display their expertise. They loan it without making a scene. He imitates that economy of kindness. He corrects posture with 2 fingers and a quiet "here," not with a public lecture. He stops needing people to know that he's working hard or being good. Benevolence is allergic to self-congratulation. It is a shadow that makes other people cooler in the heat. On a rainy Tuesday, his brother calls. "The move went fine," he says, "but the new place has a door that sticks and a sink that coughs." Old Kenji would have promised to swing by and then let the promise float until it turned sour. New Kenji checks the ledger, picks a time, Thursday, 6 to 8, and texts it. He shows up with WD-40, a wrench, and a willingness to watch a 12-minute video in silence with his brother, while the sink reveals its secrets. They fix it small piece by small piece. After, they sit on milk crates and eat takeout noodles. "You're different," his brother says, not accusatory, not amazed, just noticing. Kenji shakes his head lightly. "Just quieter," he says. He means his mouth. He also means his need to announce. As the weeks layer, he understands something the booklet didn't say out loud. These rules don't turn him into a statue. They turn him into a shelter. People don't walk around him on eggshells anymore. They lean, just a little, in the ordinary storms. He doesn't resent it. He feels bigger in the right places and smaller in the ones that used to make him hungry for credit. The teacher's line returns. Make your strength safe. Safe doesn't mean soft. It means reliable. It means he can hold his own temper and another person's fear without dropping either. On a late night when the city's noise thins, he sits at his small table with the booklet open, the brushstrokes now familiar as a friend's handwriting. He thinks back to the first morning he faced the small lion of a cold shower and the first evening he kept a tiny oath with packing tape and boxes. He thinks of the email that cost him a deal and gave him a clearer mirror. He thinks of the intern's 2-sentence explanation that finally landed, the co-worker's Friday he stole back from the edge, his father saying "it" rhymes with steady, almost smiling. He traces the 7 rules with his fingertip like a rosary. Decide straight. Walk toward fear, say little and deliver, bow with your voice, guard the name, keep the oath, make strength safe. Something in him has been dying, and it is not mourned. In its place is a man who doesn't make speeches to himself. He writes down the smallest, next hard right and does it inside 2 breaths. He approaches one lion for 3 minutes. He says exactly what he means and makes room for silence. He keeps his name clean when there's money on the table and when there isn't. He ties his loyalty to oaths, not moods. He uses his growing strength like shade. He knows tomorrow will try him again. He feels ready, not because he will feel courageous in the moment, but because he no longer requires the feeling to act. He closes the booklet and sets it where he will see it at dawn. The code will never clap for him. It will simply wait, as steady as a stone, to be kept or not. He likes the kind of man that decision is making him. Thank you for watching till the end. If this shifted something in you, even a degree, make it real right now. Subscribe if you're committed to building a life ruled by a code, not a mood. Then declare your oath in the comments in one clean sentence. For the next 7 days, I will name your rule within 2 breaths, your initials, today's date. Keep it specific. Sign it. If you're bold, pin your own comment and come back in a week to report. I'll be reading and highlighting the ones kept, not the ones promised. Share this with one person you trust to hold you to it. Write your oath on a card. Put it where your eyes land first thing in the morning. When comfort whispers, read it out loud and act before the second exhale. Remember, unbreakable isn't something you feel. It's something you prove, choice by choice, when no one's watching. Keep your name clean. Make your strength safe. Guard your oath. If this helped you see the path more clearly, subscribe and tell me the rule you're carving into today. Keep the code. I'll see you in the next one.